If your potato harvest is stuck at 5 or 6 pounds per plant, it's probably not your fertilizer, it's the way you're planting them. Most gardeners keep feeding the soil every season assuming nutrients are the problem, but potatoes don't fail because they are hungry. They fail because they are structurally limited. These plants naturally form tubers along buried stem sections, yet the traditional plant once and leave it method only gives them a single underground layer to produce from when they are biologically capable of building several. I tested this myself in the same soil with the same variety and watering schedule, no synthetic fertilizer in either row, and the only difference was structure. And the result wasn't subtle, it was nearly triple the yield in the next few minutes. I'll show you exactly what changes underground and how you can use this simple shift to dramatically increase your harvest this season. Now let's talk about the method that nearly tripled my potato harvest without changing fertilizer, soil, or watering. It's called hilling, and when done correctly, it completely transforms the plant's underground structure. Instead of planting seed potatoes 8 to 10 inches deep and leaving them there, you start shallow, about 4 to 6 inches deep, cover lightly, and allow strong top growth to establish quickly. Once the plant reaches 6 to 8 inches tall, you mound loose soil around the stem, leaving only the top few inches exposed, intentionally burying part of the stem. Then as it grows another 6 to 8 inches, you repeat the process, sometimes 2, 3, even 4 times during the season. Each time you hill, you're not just adding soil, you're expanding the underground production zone, because every buried section of stem can produce new stolons, and every stolon can form tubers, effectively creating multiple productive layers instead of a single compact zone. I tested this side by side in the same soil with the same variety and watering schedule, using no synthetic fertilizer in either row. Traditionally planted row averaged 4 to 5 pounds per plant, while the shallow planted 3 times hilled row consistently produced 12 to 13 pounds per plant, nearly triple the yield. The only difference was structure. This isn't about forcing growth with more inputs, it's about unlocking biological capacity that was already there, and once you shift from feeding the soil to expanding the stem zone, underground structure becomes the real advantage. Now, this is where many gardeners get confused. If fertilizer isn't responsible for that dramatic yield jump, then what is fertilizer? Absolutely matters. Nitrogen drives leaf growth, phosphorus supports roots, potassium plays a role in tuber development. But here's the critical distinction: nutrients influence growth, structure determines capacity. If a plant only has one underground production zone, adding more nutrients won't magically create new places for tubers to form. You might grow taller plants with darker leaves, but you won't multiply the number of productive layers below the soil. That's why so many gardeners see impressive foliage without a proportional increase in harvest weight. Synthetic fertilizers can push fast, aggressive top growth because nutrients are delivered in concentrated forms, but rapid foliage expansion above ground does not automatically translate to more tubers below. Even in rich organic soil, where nutrients are released slowly and steadily, if you don't expand the buried stem area, you're still limiting production space. In my side-by-side test, both rows had the same soil conditions. The difference wasn't what fed the plant, it was how much structural opportunity the plant was given. Underground fertilizer feeds the plant structure, multiplies the opportunity, and once you separate those two ideas clearly, it becomes obvious why expanding the stem zone through hilling has a dramatically greater impact than simply adding another bag of nutrients. Now let's talk about another factor that quietly separates average harvests from exceptional ones: water management. Potatoes don't just need water, they need steady, consistent moisture, especially during tuber formation. And when the soil swings between dry spells and heavy saturation, development slows and becomes uneven. But here's the key distinction: it's not about watering more, it's about helping the soil hold moisture properly. When soil is rich in organic matter, it becomes loose and structured, filled with tiny air pockets that act like reservoirs storing water, while still allowing oxygen to reach the roots. Without that structure, water either drains too quickly through sandy soil or suffocates roots in compacted clay, stressing the plant in both extremes. This is where mulching becomes a quiet advantage. After your final hilling, apply a 3 4-inch layer of straw shredded leaves or dry grass clippings around the base of the plants to insulate the soil, reduce evaporation, stabilize temperature, and protect the surface from sun and wind in. My trials mulched beds held moisture noticeably longer, required less frequent watering, and stayed stable during warm periods. And as the mulch slowly broke down, it fed organic matter back into the soil, improving structure. Even further, water supports growth, but soil structure determines how efficiently that water is used, and when moisture remains steady, tuber formation remains steady too. Now, let's talk about 2 mistakes that can quietly undo everything you've built. Light exposure and harvesting. Too early. Developing potato tubers must remain completely covered because the moment they are exposed to sunlight, they begin turning green and producing solanine, a natural defense compound that can cause digestive discomfort and in higher amounts toxicity. But beyond safety, green potatoes are a clear sign that your structure failed, either because the plants weren't hilled high enough or rain washed soil away from the mound. Proper hilling doesn't just increase production zones, it protects those zones. So as the season progresses, check the base of your plants and immediately cover any swelling tubers pushing toward the surface. The second mistake is impatience. Many gardeners harvest when foliage is still partially green or just after flowering, but the most significant bulking phase happens in the final weeks as the plant naturally dies back. Wait until the foliage has fully yellowed and dried, then give it another 7 to 14 days before digging. During that time, skins thicken and tubers continue sizing up, and in my trials, delaying harvest by just 2 weeks increased total yield by up to 30%. Structure builds capacity, but patience completes the process, and those final weeks often determine whether your harvest is merely decent or truly exceptional. There's one final principle that determines whether this method delivers for one impressive season or keeps producing year after year: crop rotation. This is where many gardeners unknowingly sabotage their long-term results. Potatoes are heavy feeders, especially of potassium and phosphorus, and when they are planted in the same bed repeatedly, specific nutrients become depleted. Pest pressure quietly builds and soil-borne diseases gain strength beneath the surface. Colorado potato beetles overwinter in the soil. Fungal spores can remain active for multiple seasons. Replanting potatoes in the same spot essentially gives those problems a permanent address, and no amount of perfect hilling can compensate for declining soil health. The solution is strategic rotation. After potatoes, switch to a different plant family. Ideally, legumes like beans or peas, which partner with beneficial bacteria to naturally fix nitrogen and rebalance the soil. The following season, move to leafy crops or brassicas, then fruiting crops such as tomatoes or peppers, and only after 3 to 4 seasons return potatoes to that bed. Rotation breaks pest cycles, redistributes nutrient demand, and protects the structural gains you've worked to build. Structure increases yield in the short term. Rotation safeguards it in the long term. And if you want harvests that improve instead of decline, this step is optional. It's the foundation that keeps everything working year after year. If you step back and look at the full picture, the difference was never complicated. It was structural. You didn't need more fertilizer, you needed more opportunity beneath the soil. By planting shallow and hilling gradually, you expanded the underground stem zone and multiplied where tubers could form. By managing moisture with mulch, you stabilized development during the most critical growth phases. By protecting tubers from light and waiting for full dieback before harvesting, you allowed the plant to complete its natural bulking cycle. And by rotating crops, you protected the soil that makes all of it possible year after year. None of this depends on expensive inputs or chasing bigger bags of nutrients. It depends on understanding how the plant actually works. That's the real shift when you stop trying to force growth and start building capacity. Results change. If this breakdown helped you see potatoes differently, subscribe and stay connected. This channel is about practical biology-driven methods that increase yield through understanding, not guesswork. And this season, when you plant your potatoes, remember the real difference won't come from what you add on top. It will come from the structure you build beneath the soil.